Alrighty. When it comes down to law of cosines, there are really three things that you need to have written down for this one. Now, the nice thing is about law of sines, it was a pretty easy thing to deal with because it was just a ratio between the side and the angle. Law of cosines is a little bit different because each one expects you to have the labels, not the labels, but the values for each one of the sides and the missing angle. So you've got to make sure you set yourself up the angle, the triangle first before you go through and try and do this stuff. So let's take a look at example 1. Now again, draw all of this stuff out when it comes to the triangles, especially important to go through and do that. So, got a triangle going on here. Now, we don't necessarily know what's what, and we really don't care what's equal to what. We've got an A, we've got a B, we've got a C. A, B, C. Now, they say that C is 60 degrees down here. Okay? Side for A is going to be 2. Side for B is going to be 3. Okay? So these are the things that we are going to be looking for. So when we take a look back at the law of sines, we need to figure out which one of these we need to use. Okay? So which one are we going to use? First one, second one, third one? Which one? What are we looking for? Which is the big question. What are we looking for? Okay, so we're looking for side C. So if we're looking for side C, which one of those should I use? C squared one? So we're going to be dealing with C squared. Oops, wrong one. Wrong pen. So C squared is going to be equal to what? A squared plus B squared minus what? 2AB cosine C. Now the nice thing is it just simply fill in the blank. So C squared is going to be equal to A squared, which is what? Well, that's 2. So it's going to be 4 plus B squared, and B is 3, so that's going to be 9, minus what? Well, 2 times 3 cosine, cosine 60 degrees. C squared is going to be equal to 15, 13. It's one of those days. It's Monday, right? 13 minus 12 cosine 60 degrees. Okay. So, am I down to a point that I can just slam this thing into the calculator and calculate it out now? Hope so. Move this over there so we end up with, clear it out. Make sure that I am in degrees. Otherwise, we're going to have a very, very, very bad situation. So I got cosine 60 multiplied by 12. So really it's 13 minus 6, right? So we end up with C squared is equal to 13 minus 6. So C is going to be equal to the square root of, well, what's 13 minus 6? 7. So C should be equal to what as a decimal value? What's it got to be equal to?
2.65.
Okay. So C is supposed to be equal to 2.65. So that means this side right here is 2.65. Now, one of the other things about this is, when we take the square root to both sides, do we have to consider positive and negative?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah. No.
Well, what about in this case? Do I have to?
No, I'm not supposed to know. Yeah.
Why?
You can't have a negative side.
So distance can't be negative, so we're going to end up being right down there and just leave it at that. Now, depending upon what you need, you can leave it at square root 7 so that you have an exact answer. If you're working with it, you actually need the value 2.65. Makes a little more sense to be worked with, okay? So that's pretty easy, right? But now what I need to know is what the angles are. I've got all of the sides taken care of. Now how do I deal with the angles? Well, depending upon what you want to do. Do I have enough information now to go through and use the law of sines to go and figure out what's left? Okay, so if I want to, I could just simply go through and say, let's see, we got the sine of 60 degrees over square root 7. Don't use 2.65. That'll make a mess out of it. And let's see, we can do the sine of a over 2, right? So 2 times that divided by square root 7. Okay. Well, what's 2? Well, we know this is 0.5, right? So 2 times 0.5 is what? 1. So that means that this is going to have to be what then? Divided by that, isn't that just going to be 1 over square root 7? Isn't that what that would be? Okay. So if I know that, that means that take the calculator again, and since we're in degrees, we can go second inverse cosine of 1 divided square root 7, close it. And so I know what the measure of the other one is going to be. So we know that we're going to have A is going to be equal to 67 degrees, right? Does that make sense? So if A is going to be equal to 67 degrees, got that written down. 67 point what? What was it? Come on, calculator. 67.8, right? So what's the other one got to be? $52.3? Okay. 52.2. Okay. That's what it should be, right? Now, take a look in your book and take a look at what the answer is. This is one of the things that we had talked about with the sine. We got to be extremely careful about it. If you read the paragraph there, it says sine C is of length square root 7. To find the angles of A and B, we can either use law of sines or the law of cosines. Now, it is preferable to use the law of cosines since it will lead to an equation with one solution. Okay? The law of sines leads us to something that gives us 2. There's always 2 possibilities when we do that inverse sine bit, okay? Positive and negative. So we'd have to keep that in mind. So while dealing with the law of sines really is handy, you need to make sure that you don't use it to get an erroneous answer. So, what did I get here? Looked all good, right? But since there was two possibilities going on here, I've got a bit of a problem. So I can't always rely on the law of sines to do it because it will end up with a wrong answer. Or I shouldn't say wrong answer, it gives you with two possible answers. So now, let's back this up and take a look at it if I were to use the law of cosines. Okay? So I want to go through and find out what one of the angles are. Which one do you want, A or B? A, okay. So that means if I am going to be using this on A, I need to make sure that I end up with the rule for the law of cosines that is dealing with A. So that means it's going to be, whoops, where'd it go? So that means I've got A squared is going to be equal to B squared plus C squared is minus 2 what? BC cosine of A. Now, we know what side A is, right? That's 2. So 2 squared gives us the 4. What's B squared? 9. Plus C squared. Well, C was the square root of 7. So this is just simply going to be 7 minus 2 multiplied by B, which is going to be 3. Square root 7. Cosine of A. Okay. So it would be really handy to have these things built into as a spreadsheet, because then you can just have the formula in there, drop the stuff in there, and automatically do the calculations. You have the capability of doing such things. Yeah, you do. So 4 is going to be equal to, we end up with 16 minus 6 square root 7 cosine A. Subtract 16, so we end up with negative 12 is equal to negative 6 square root of 7 cosine A. So that's going to give us 12 over 6 square root 7 cosine A. So what I would do is I would write inverse cosine of 2 over square root 7 is going to be equal to what A is. Okay? So now when I go through and do this, on helps, clear it out. So second, inverse cosine of 2 divided by square root 7. That did not go in right, did it? Nope. Delete, go away, there it goes. Second. Square root 7, close it. That probably going to give me an error with that other parenthesis. Nope, don't forget. Yeah, that was luck. So, I've got 40.9.
Well, the first time we did it was wrong.
Yeah, but do you know why we did it? Why it was wrong when we did it the first way? Because there's always the possibility of two answers when you're doing that type of a triangle and using the law of sines. Okay? So, law of cosines kind of gets rid of all of that. So law of cosines, it's a handy little thing to have. Okay? So, let's try this one. Got that. So go back here. Triangle. That's not what I wanted. Boom. So let's see. So that's going to be 3, that's going to be 4, and that's going to be 6. Okay. So which way do you want to go? Where do you want to start? Does it honestly matter which one we tackle first? Pick one.
Put A then.
Okay. So that's 4, so that's going to be A down here. That means B is going to be up here. C is going to be there. So you want 4 squared is going to be equal to 3 squared plus 6 squared minus 2 times 3 times 6 cosine A. A lot of times I always want to go through, just plug the stuff in like I've said it a bazillion times to you guys. Plug it in, then go and calculate from there. So I got 16, 9, 36, minus 72. No, 36, sorry. I carried away there. Cosine A. I tell you, one of the biggest problems that students have with this thing is they'll take 9 plus 36 minus 36. They do the addition on there. They forget about the order of operations. That is a big, bad no-no. Okay? 45. Subtract 45. And you end up with what? No. 29? Negative, of course. Minus 36. Cosine A. Add 36. Add 36. So we end up with... You're right. It's one of those days. Actually, the thing is, it got into the habit of adding and subtracting because I would have gotten a value less or bigger than 1, wouldn't I? And that would have been kind of a bad thing, right? So, what I'm really going to be looking here is at the cosine inverse of 29 over 36 is going to be equal to A. So, calculate.
With the inverse or what?
Well, because you're looking for the degree measure. Because we're saying that the cosine of A is equal to this, so inverse cosine of A is going to be equal to the degree measure. So clear that out. Let's see, second inverse cosine of 29 divided by 36, close it. And we end up with 36.3 degrees. Okay. Will that turn out right?
Yeah.
Okay. So 36.3 degrees, right? Yeah. Now, we would repeat inverse cosine or law of cosines again, come up with the next thing. Okay. So I'm not necessarily going to run through that again because it's just simply plugging and grinding. And then once you got 2 of the degree measures, you subtract from 180 and get the last one. Okay. So
Yeah, this is pretty easy.
that's that. And if you got any other questions, we shall take care of them
What is
later.
8-1 and other one?